This week, an Illinois judge ruled that Donald Trump is not eligible to be on the state's Republican primary ballot for his role in the January 6th insurrection. The outcome of this case and cases in Colorado and Maine will likely be decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. Illinois' primary is a little more than 2 weeks away, and early voting has already begun. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is back with us. Governor, you have voters in your state who probably feel like they're in a little bit of limbo waiting for the Supreme Court to act not only on the 14th Amendment, but also on this question of presidential immunity. Do you have faith in this Supreme Court?
Well, they haven't given us much reason to have faith in them, but I will say that this is going to be based on a technical aspects of the Constitution and whether or not, if Donald Trump hasn't actually been convicted of insurrection, whether he can be held liable according to the Constitution and kept off the ballot. That's not something that we'll decide in Illinois. It's going to get decided at the U.S. Supreme Court. Meanwhile, I think that we're prepared to fight this battle at the ballot box. And you got to remember, we've done this twice before, and we've beaten Donald Trump in Illinois by 16 points in 2016, 17 points in 2020. He's, in trouble in Illinois. We want him on the ballot, frankly, because he's a detriment to Republicans across the United States, but especially in Illinois.
That point about you want him on the ballot, this idea that the Democrats would love nothing more than to have Donald Trump removed because they just are so concerned about Joe Biden running against him. It's like he is actually a drag. But the reason people are bringing these challenges, and oftentimes they are Republicans who are bringing the challenges to remove him from the ballot, is because of what Donald Trump has done.
That's true. And remember that people are truly offended. I mean, middle-class Americans, working Americans, people who've been left out and left behind, they know what Donald Trump was doing to them for 4 years as president. And they don't need a lot of reminding, but they do need to be reminded. And like I said before, we're going to make sure we do that over the next 8 months. But we think we can beat him at the ballot box and all across the nation. And as you know, I've been traveling the nation to make sure that we're putting pro-choice amendments on the ballot in Nevada and Arizona, Montana. We're working in Florida and elsewhere, and in Virginia, I might add. We think that people showing up to vote in November for their freedoms, and especially women, people who understand that Donald Trump's trying to take those freedoms away, they're going to also vote for pro-choice candidates.
Can I just read this for a second? Sure. Because your work to put abortion on the ballot across the country is happening in the context of, yes, Roe, but also what Donald Trump's allies are saying they're going to do in the next election. I mean, allies are saying that Donald Trump is planning a Department of Life. It's an abortion crackdown in the second term. Like, these plans come from the Heritage Foundation, but this Project 2025 is directly linked to what these are like all of the plans for his next administration should he be elected. They are coming after abortion. They're coming after contraception. I mean, we've seen folks come after IVF. This is not a hypothetical situation.
Well, Clarence Thomas gave you a preview in his write-up on Dobbs. Right? He told you basically that they're coming after gay marriage, they're coming after women's health, and they're coming after contraception. And guess what? We just saw in Alabama, they're coming after IVF. And I have to tell you, I think that the Republicans brought this on themselves. People should be reminded over and over again that this is just the beginning of what they're trying to take away from you.
So let's pick up on that point, because polling still shows, and Simone and I,
we hate the polls.
We hate the polls.
We like state polls better.
National polling right now is a farce. But the state on the ground polls, I think, are a little bit closer to where folks are. But you still have a narrative problem, Governor, that there is this disconnect between what voters are likely to do, saying that they'd like to do. Donald Trump is their choice. And what you're right now sharing with us in terms of the stakes that matter. How do you make that? What's the game plan to make that connection? Is it on the ground? Is it on the air? I mean, what is the narrative, and what is the vehicle through which you get this communicated so folks understand? I mean, you could do the fallback, as Simone and I know. We go, well, people aren't paying attention, but In a way, they are. I mean, you know, they're looking at it and they are forming some ideas. You're right, Super Tuesday really is the bell that signals the general election. But I think a lot of us are nervous. A lot of us are concerned that there are more Americans that are buying the crap coming out of Donald Trump's mouth every day because it's soothing. It's, you know, they think he's actually going to do something for them when Joe Biden is doing something for them.
Well, I think the contrast, again, has to be made clear, we think, on the air, you know, on social media and online, and at the doors. And remember that we Democrats are best when we are knocking on doors and making sure that we talk to people at doors and getting them out to vote. And that's what we're doing all across the country. We know where the swing states are. You know, we know that we've got to do a lot of work at the doors. But again, the contrast is stark, right? I mean, if you believe that women's reproductive rights are important, then we're going to make sure you know who stands where, that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are standing up for your freedom, that Donald Trump is the one that took it away, right? And making sure that people understand that your voting rights have been taken away by Donald Trump's Supreme Court, and that if Joe Biden gets an opportunity to appoint people to the Supreme Court, he already has, he puts on people who stand up for voting rights and will help pass laws that protect those rights. So, again, that case hasn't been made. The starkness of the two choices has not been made in front of people. I know that, you know, you all are on television constantly. You talk about it. But I'm talking about at the doors and also side by side. People need to see it. We don't yet have the two candidates side by side, and those rights are going to be taken away even further. You know, we talk about democracy. I do not think that is the best argument for us to make to the American public. I think it's an argument because it's true. But I think for the vast majority of people, what they want to know is, what are you going to do for me at helping me get a better job, getting a better wage, you know, making sure that our country is more secure. On all of those fronts, Joe Biden has proven that he is the best choice.
Right, and we have learned from reporting that is likely what we're going to hear from the president at his State of the Union on Thursday. You know, I'm pretty judicious, Governor, about when I play sound from former President Trump. But when it comes to this question of mental acuity, I think sometimes it is best to hear from the man himself. Here is former President Trump in Richmond, Virginia, just last night.
When I say Barack Hussein Obama, the president of our country, on the news that night, they go, Donald Trump didn't know the name of our president. He said it was President Obama. It's President Biden. So I have to be very, very careful.
Governor, I think the lady doth protest too much. If part of the contrast is going to be about acuity, well, then there you have it.
Well, remember, you know, he's bragging about a cognitive test that he took in which they showed him a picture of a shark and a lion, you know, a few other animals and a whale. And he bragged about he recognized the lion. You know, that's nice. But remember that Joe Biden is handling the complexities of the world. You saw that for the last week on every issue in the Middle East. I mean, the man is doing yeoman work, and you got a guy on the other side who, frankly, barely knows the difference between one animal and another.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, what a treat to have.